Ladies and gentlemen of the old world, I hope you're all doing well, and welcome to this community showdown. It's going to be the Beastmen led by Elvio facing off against the Wood Elves, who shall be helmed by attack speed enjoyer here on the Arachnarok lair, and this is certainly one of the more iconic matchups in the game. Very much a game of speed and mobility, and although the Beastmen build is very, very front heavy, it does have a lot of infantry, a lot of archers, so looking to just kind of swarm the objectives. So like I said, front line for the Beastmen is going to be Ungor spears with shields, and you don't really want to throw anything probably that good into the Wood Elf front line, considering how good their archers are, their shock cav, as well as their own infantry, like Dryads can mulch your kind of baseline troops. I think just throwing chaff at them is good, and then allowing the Ungor Raiders to do most of the damage is going to be pretty sweet, and I would imagine the reinforcing army for this Beastmen player for Elvio is probably like mostly Centaurs. For the leadership kit, though, it's going to be two bulls. Now, this is a little bit off meta. I think that maybe Elvio was expecting like a Durthu pick, like Durthu just getting in the middle and anchoring on a Arachnarok lair, which is very much like a brawler map, so I do like this quite a bit. But it is going to be the Doom Bull and also the Gore Bull here ready to party, so that is certainly some good stopping power. Aside from that, I think that's it for the Beastmen army, although on the far side, yeah, just a wide line of Raiders backed up by Bray Shaman of Shadows, who's going to be using Melkoths and Enfeebling Foe, so just looking to alter some combats and use the Melkoths to wreck the heavy cav. Now, for the great attack speed enjoyer, Sisters of Thorn, very cool. They're a decent little hybrid unit. Their buffs are good, and they do have or debuffs, the Curse of On-Rare and then Shield of Thorn, so they can do some nice harass. Pretty good against Centaurs because they can kite them, javelin them down. If they have to fight in melee, they're not terrible at it. So I do really, really like seeing Sisters of Thorn in action. I think they're rad. 2 units of Glade Riders backed up by a Treekin, so a rare sighting of a Treekin is very, very fun. Lord is going to be a Shadowcaster with Melkoths to punish Centaurs, obviously, and then just a bunch of mobility and Treekin on the outsides. It's a very, very fun build out of the gate. Certainly like it quite a bit. Now, the objective situation, objective Uno, is going to be going to the Wood Elves, and it looks like the Treekin are going to be in glorious, glorious wet noodle combat here with the Ungors. And the Ungors would probably lose that eventually, but it would take like 15 years. Well, I don't know. Maybe they would be able to edge that one out. It's hard to say. But there's a little bit of missile support, and we do get Eternal Guard moving in, and the middle objective is going to be taken by the Bray herd. So we do see the herds of the Bray, the hooved ones, moving up and grabbing objective 2, and they're also going to be getting their filthy clutches here on objective 3. Centaurs on the outside, going to be chasing down the Glade Riders, and all is calm in the realm. The Shadowcaster is running away, being harried by the Spellweaver on the Eagle, which is pretty good against a Chariot character, right? Chariot characters aren't the best in combat. Some of them are decent. There are some characters on Chariots that can fight big things, like you remember Grom the Paunch in Warhammer 2, he was like soloing big stuff. Sometimes the stat line's very good, and they have the proper attack animations, they can get her done. Yeah, Beastmen do have a triple cap out of the gates here. Wood Elves playing a very cagey game, using their Sisters of Thorn to kind of encircle, and here the Treekin are going to be bashing and just, oh no, they're actually not. They pulled back. Okay, I thought I saw, the trees over here distracted me, but it looks like they've waited back here in the tree line and are going to be chilling out. But yeah, this is very much going to be like a build-up style from attack speed and short. Probably. He probably realizes his army is very skirmish heavy and doesn't really have a lot of like stopping power to get in there and, actually push them off the objectives. So he's just going to be using his missile poke with the Sisters of Thorn and the Glade Riders to do what damage he can before he's able to call in the tools he needs. Domination is very much like a... Yeah, you want your army to be like a Swiss Army knife, sort of. I mean, there are builds that are very skewed in one direction and just try and hyper-extend into one style, like maybe stuffing your opponent back in their deployment zone. But oftentimes, the thing is, in domination mode, you're going to have reinforcements that will, of course, help address the weaknesses of your starting army here, which I would imagine is going to be the case. Wild Rider's doing pretty good, afflicted by Enfeebling Foe. So look at this. Both of them kind of expecting to play the mobile cav game and debuffing one another's cav. Now, in a straight-up fight, the Wild Riders, of course, would win that against Centaurs. They have a much better stat line and are harder hitting and everything, but yeah, the debuffs are pretty nasty. It looks like the Wild Riders are going to be retreating back here as the Treekin and Eternal Guard maybe thinking about moving up. No play really on the middle. Both people are kind of chilling out there, but on the outside, the Wood Elves have made a play, and it's going to be the Wraiths of the Frozen Heart. Now, Wraiths of the Frozen Heart are pretty awesome. They hit hard, they have Frostbite, certainly going to have no problems cutting through Beastmen. Now, where they'd be a little bit vulnerable would be against like Mass, but if you stack them with the Treekin unit, Treekin are going to be able to absorb Centaur charges and charges from any other Mass. The one thing that is probably good against both of these, though, is like light poke, like Ungor Raiders. So it looks like Elvio here is going to be prepared and just, get his 2 Raiders to turn about face and start peppering those guys downtown. I think that'd be pretty sweet. Over towards Objective 3, the fighting continues, and the Wood Elves do have their Eternal Guard and their Treekin here, but it looks like both the Bull characters have gotten involved, and they're going to be okay at clearing out these type of units. Gore Bull is an anti-large character. Gore Bull wants to be attacking, of course, the big Treekin. That's going to be a little bit more ideal for him. But yeah, it looks like the Beastmen, they got their clutches on 2 and 3, and Objective 1, though, the Wood Elves were able to get that one, so that will stem the bleeding a little bit. But now comes the dreaded Beastmen mobility, Centaurs. Although Eternal Guard are pretty good against them. They have insanely good leadership, although, man, these Eternal Guard not shielded. Those Ungor Raiders are going to Unga Bunga all over their faces if they're not careful. Yeah, I love seeing Treekin picks. I think they're pretty underrated, like a really, really decent roadblock unit. These things have freaking high armor. They have physical resist, I believe missile resist, very high melee defense at 46. It takes a long time to kill them. As far as like monstrous infantry goes, might be one of the tankiest ones in the entire game. I'm trying to think. Croxigors do have 100 armor, but yeah, no, the physical resist and the missile resist and the high MD, I mean, that's just a lot. So this is probably going to be the angle the Wood Elves play. Like, you got to sometimes take advantage of the one spot you're winning and build from there, right? So I think that's what's going to happen. Attack Speed Enjoyer is probably going to kind of rotate all his mobility over here and support the push of the one position he's actually winning pretty effectively in. Here, this Spell Weaver Shadow circling overhead. Some random Glade Riders have rallied back here, and the Eternal Guard have done very well, actually. I mean, despite this fight being a losing fight for the Wood Elves, I do say that with air quotes, the Treekin are routing. But the Eternal Guard were able to get a ton of damage against the Gorbel and Homeboy here. You can see the Gorbel's at like, what, 25% maybe? And here the Doombull is going to be low as well. So this is a pretty sweet little play. And those Eternal Guard showing why they're a very stalwart and, decent spear unit. So back on this point, do we see the Beastmen making a play for it? Looks like Centaurs coming in as well as some more Centaurs, but they are screened out by some Sisters of Thorn, and Wild Riders actually getting the Shield of Thorns. Now, damage reflection is an interesting one in this game. It can actually be decent at times. In the back, we do see the Pigeon Caster going after the Bray Shaman, which is good. Any free damage you can get like this it's free real estate. So move in there, peck that caster a little bit, and if you could do that, 5 more times over the course of the game, this guy could be running, right? So you just kind of add up there. But the Wood Elves actually win the mobility duel down here. Granted, we do see Khorngors coming in, so Khorngors is going to be very nice here. Their anti-large halberds will be able to cut apart a lot of the Christmas cavalry, as we do see the Elven cav start to run from the Khorngors. Khorngors will probably down trade into things like Dryads, and even Eternal Guard will probably trade okay into them. I mean, they would win those fights probably, although against Dryads, I don't know. Yeah, I think they would beat a Dryad unit, but they cost a bit more than a Dryad, so something to consider. And what are the Wood Elves going to do? Are they going to yield this point to the Khorngor? Looking on the middle, though, it looks like the Wood Elves do surge up, so they came up from the low ground here. They move the spears in and begin the mortal combat. Dryad's going to be tearing it up in the middle. And on the backside here, we do have more Dryads moving into the Archer line. So the Ungor Raiders do get stuffed, and now this is really big. These Ungor Raiders are excellent against Wood Elves. Most of the infantry are countered by them, right? The Eternal Guard have no shields, only 40 armor. Dryads have 60 armor, Phys Res, but, still the light Archer fire can be pretty punishing. And to the back, oh, wow, this is a big play by Attack Speed Enjoyer. This is exactly what he needs, right? Because currently, as it stands, the Beastmen have had pretty good control over the objectives, but getting a healthy caster off the battlefield this early on, we're only 6 minutes into the game, and this homeboy is going to be escorted off. That pig is going to be squealing all the way to the bank, and overall, that is a big dub right there. So, huge win for the Wood Elves in the hero department, so that's going to give them the magic advantage. The Beastmen still have a good leadership kit, though. We do have a Doombull as well as a Gorbel. Both those guys are chilling and doing pretty good here. On the low ground objective, the Wood Elves were going to lose that objective. We see the Race of the Frozen Heart get finished off by the Khorngors, but now another Dryad unit's going to come in. The Dryad do have a charge bonus of almost 20, and they get the charge off, so maybe they'll trade well into the Khorngors. I'm actually very curious to see how that goes. But Wood Elves really need to hold on to this one. They are behind in points, and every little bit matters here on the Arachnarok layer, which I think is an amazing map, by the way. It's very, very good. Treekin moving up, a little bit of a risky one. They're moving into the secondary to go after some of the archers. I think staying down in the objective might have been better. Granted, I think they're running away from the Khorngors, which I understand. But now they're going to be attacked by the two bull characters, right? So we have the Doom Bull as well as the Gorbel, both of whom have very good armor piercing, and one of which has anti-large, so that will cut apart those trees very quickly, so that's unfortunate. Wild Riders with shields coming in, and where are they going to go? Wood Elves do have the middle objective. Dryads pushing up. On the low ground, it looks like the Beastmen have a firm hold on this one, though. No games down here. A healthy Khorngor unit, a Raider unit, and a relatively healthy Ungor Spearman unit. So this objective is going to remain in the clutches of the Beastmen probably for a long time. And I think the epicenter of the battle and those real strategy is going to be applied to objectives 2 and objectives 1. So the battle continues to rage on down below. And it looks like the Khorngors do actually start losing that fight against the Dryads, but also they were flank charged by some Wild Riders, so not really going to be a great test for us. But the two Khorngor units, probably going to be able to overwhelm the Dryads if there's no Elven support, and the Wild Riders are going to be fleeing the scene. Obviously not a good fight for them. So where are the Wood Elves going to go, right? Because this is a precarious one. When you're playing against Beastmen and in the mid-game, you're spamming out cav units, right? You're like, okay, I want to get my cav, my mobility out, and, get to the battlefield quickly. But then your opponent's just spamming Khorngors out, and you're like, oh, boy. There's nowhere really for your cav to go. So for the Wood Elves right now, they just need to find some fights that aren't bad and just get some value. Currently 7.6 against 7.2. Really, really close game. The Christmas cav are going to be coming to deliver Christmas to the foul Beastmen. And they do get a beautiful charge right there, punting some of the Beastmen into another dimension. And they'll be taking huge casualties. Wild Riders are pretty nasty shot cav against light armor. They definitely hurt pretty bad. You can see 43 melee attack, 44 weapon strength, charge bonus of 68, a solid kit, and very quick too. But they do get afflicted by Melkots and countercharged by a couple Centaurs, but another unit of Wild Riders is going to be coming in, and they're going to be charging in and getting ready to party. And it looks like the Bray Shaman, his cousin, was called in, and here the Spellweaver may be thinking about trying to get that Bray Shaman. But the fact that the Bray Shaman was killed earlier is huge, right? Because then instead of summoning in maybe 3 units worth of capture weight, your opponent has to build up and summon their caster back, and they lose a lot of agency on the battlefield. So that's a tricky thing. Like, more often than not, I know a lot of people don't like Lord resummoning, and personally I wouldn't care at all if CA removed Lord unsummoning. I think it's kind of lame. Or Lord resummoning. I think it's kind of lame too. But it's usually a mistake. Like, when people resummon their Lord, it's usually because they're in a desperate bad situation, and it ends up not being the correct play. I mean, there are times where it's correct for sure. If you're playing Skaven and you have a cheap Lord, getting your leadership back in your army is pretty big. But generally speaking, it's a tricky one. So Wild Riders once again afflicted by Melkoths, and there's going to be a big pit fight here. This is going to be a very important one. We have 2 very expensive Elven units battling against the Centaurs, Gorebull, Shadowcaster. I mean, it's going to be a heavy-duty fight. Looking on the low ground, it looks like the Bray Herd was able to claim victory down here as the 2 Khorngors were able to get her done. Centaurs up on the high ground, chasing down whatever they can. The scraps of the Sisters of Thorn and some Treekin actually still alive, which is cool. But really, we just need to watch this fight where Elvio seems to be taking the advantage here. I love seeing the Doombull Lords. They're super cool. Yeah, so here comes the Doombull. Maybe going to get this Spellweaver. That'd be pretty big. He does have the Brass Knuckle Boxing, or the Dazed ability is what it's called. And when he punches you in the face, it should daze you and slow that character down. So we can see the speed slowed down to 80, down to 71 here because of the daze. And yeah, these characters might be able to get some value. I mean, you could even use a Melkoths on this bird to slow it down, but probably not worth it. The Eagles are very quick and very, very tough to lock down. But I think this fight went pretty well for Elvio here. And it looks like he's maybe going to start taking over the game on the back of that. Down here, we have a couple Dryads moving in. They're going to be nibbling at the flanks here. Although Gorebull does get kind of smashed up. No Wild Hunters of Karnus, mind you. Neither of these Wild Riders are the expensive variant, and some of the Khorngors do move up here, and Doombull is going to be charging in, trying to get an attack, and he does actually clip the Spellweaver on the way up, and it does take some damage, but we will see how that unfurls. Dryads on the low ground, engaging against Khorngors. Dryads should be able to win that fight, considering the current health state of those Khorngor units. And Khorngors have also arrived on the middle. And the Wood Elves do own this objective, but it's going to start flipping very, very quickly, because the Wood Elves don't really have the tools to contest this. There's no archers, and nothing to really pepper them down safely from a distance. Eagle character going for the dreaded pecking here on the Bray Shaman, been really aggressive. Attack speed and Jorah's micro has been quite nice. I mean, normally people are very cautious with an Eagle caster, but this one's been getting in. Blunder and micro there. Forgets the Wild Riders for a second, and the Beastmen do pounce, and the Wild Riders are going to be caught unaware, afflicted by the enfeebling foe, and a lot of foul shadow magic being used in this Duel of Fates. This matchup's always really, really fun. The games are dynamic and really makes for some fun situations here. So down on the low ground, ladies and gentlemen, we do have the old Beastmen, and looks like they are going to lose this objective to a couple Dryads, which is going to help keep attack speed and Enjoyer in the game, but the points lead for the Beastmen now is pretty considerable, and they have waves and waves of good, solid staying power moving up onto both objectives, which the Wood Elves are just kind of desperately scrapping. They're down in value, using their mobility to kind of squeeze every morsel they can. But I think it's going to be Elvio's game at this point. It ain't my first rodeo, and that would be my prediction going forward. I think it's a pretty obvious prediction as well, so don't take too much for that. 535 HP on the Gorebull. He's going to be probably escorted off to the Shadow Realm. Doombull's going to be coming back in. But what can the Wood Elves possibly do? We have more Dryads coming in. Dryads will trade well here. That is for sure, especially the Race of the Frozen Heart. We'll have to see. Maybe they're going to be able to wrestle something. And oh no, this objective didn't get flipped. And in a close game like this, I mean, every little bit matters. That's really unfortunate. So this objective 3 actually does remain in the clutches of the Beastmen. Yeah, that's got to hurt, man. That's got to hurt, but it is what it is. So objective 2 in the Beastmen control, and now Khorngors and Centaurs going to be swarming down to the low ground. Beastmen are one of the best factions in domination because of how good their mobility is. They can play the field so freaking well. But Beastmen are can play a number of ways. They can play the field, play wide objectives. They can play narrow if they want. They even have a monster match style play using Gorgons and things like that. So a very, very good dynamic faction, which just goes to show sometimes the old factions, they still got it, man. They still got it. But yeah, I don't see any way that attack speed Enjoyer is going to be able to come back here. We'll fast forward a little bit. I mean, down here we see some scrapping. He's trying to charge, but these are all Khorngors, which get unbreakable for a long period of time. And that's going to be a victory for the Warherd of the One Eye, although no Khazrak. He hasn't been spotted in months, but yeah, good game. Really nice one by Elvio and attack speed Enjoyer. I think they're clanmates, so it was a Obi-Wan Anakin situation. The bull core is cool because Durthu is good, and having these guys to kind of keep Durthu honest, and they were still useful in that game, right? It wasn't like they were useless. The Raiders did fine. A lot of them paid for themselves. Raiders are just such a good unit, and Centaurs and Khorngors in reserve, pretty standard stuff there. For attack speed Enjoyer, cool army. This build I think would have been a lot better on a big map. Like a map that's open and big, like a Road to Talabheim or Borderlow Landing where you have a home objective and you can really skirmish heavily. A Ragnarok Lair is what I like to call a brawler map, where it's a little bit harder to play this kind of mobility style on that map. I mean, mobility is still important, but it needs to be like aggressive mobility, and this is more like defensive kiting style of play, which is really good on Road to Talabheim, Edge of the Darkwood, you know, those kind of maps, but here it's a tricky pickle. All right, guys, GG, well played. Hopefully you enjoyed this one, and we will see you on the other side.